I've got a few items here. I'm starting off with some Speedball block printing ink, and then I've got a couple of brayers. I've got a rigid acrylic brayer, and then I've got the soft brayer for applying the ink. So I lay the ink down on a glass surface. I know you're really digging the floral patterns here, but you roll out the ink, and you want to get like a nice tacky sort of surface area. It's gonna, sound and feel a little bit like Velcro. And basically, once you kind of roll that out on the glass surface, you're going to apply that here to the block. And again, on the block, you want to get that same sort of sound and texture, sort of like a Velcro sort of sound. So you're going to get that real tacky surface, and that's what's going to help it apply to the paper as you're applying it. So basically from here you just want to lay your paper down on your inked block. I'm just sort of laying it down here. I'm taking my acrylic roller and applying pressure to it. And you want to get good coverage so so the ink actually adheres to the paper, and you just kind of pull that off, and that's what you get. So these are some textures that I've created here from this block that's uncarved. Alright, here I've scanned in one of the textures that I've created, and I've from the selection menu I've opened up the selection range, and I am selecting a range of colors so I can basically isolate my texture from the background. So I've selected the white where I can actually delete that. So in order to do that, you actually have to convert your background into a layer on its own, and you can do that under your layer properties by selecting new layer. So now you have your background isolated and you're ready to work with your texture. Okay, you'll have to excuse me because I'm just, white trash from Tennessee. So I've got a mandala, I believe that's how it's pronounced, here that I created previously, and basically this is what I'm going to use to actually apply my texture to. So I take my texture and drag it over into this design, and from there I'm going to select this texture layer, and by using my layer style I'm going to do a color overlay of white, because essentially that's the color that I want my texture to be. The next step to this is to go to the layer that actually has your artwork, and you want to click your layer thumbnail while holding down the Apple key, and what that's going to do is basically select your artwork, and from there you go back to your texture, you go down and select your mask, and that actually masks your texture layer in the shape of your artwork, and there you have your texture. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is sort of add a little noise to the background, and a way to do that is to actually create another layer with your texture, and from here I'm going to actually turn this texture black, the color of your background. And there's a lot of ways to do this. I mean, you could actually use a different texture that you've actually scanned in. I'm using basically the same one, but I'm going to take that layer and I'm going to duplicate it. And from what I found, if you actually duplicate that layer and then trim it by flipping it the opposite way, then that kind of creates more of a background sort of layer where just only a little bit of that texture is going to show through. So I've got that the same color as my background, then I create another layer and actually fill that layer with the same color of my artwork. And as you'll see here, that sort of creates a little background noise, and it just makes it a little bit more of an authentic sort of of texture, and there's a lot of different things that you can do to this to manipulate it. This is a real, sort of quick, down and dirty example here. If I was to actually create this, for a final piece of artwork, I probably would have adjusted some of my my selection properties, when I was doing my color range to give it a little bit more of a subtlety, but I think this sort of gets the idea across. And essentially this is it. I mean, this is how I create my artwork. These are the sorts of textures that I use. I mean, they're real nice organic textures created through the actual block printing process.